time yet?
Nope.
Have a nap.
Nope.
When does it start?
No.
Come on, now?
All right.
Time for the show, guys.
To the Batmobile. Let's go. Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed. Roger. Ready to move out.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to our third show. This is Nerdcast. I'm Jess.
And I'm an evil version of myself. Tonight, we've got news and views, Comic Crash, and our new host, Bill Allen, will be doing the philosophy of Star Trek.
Welcome. So, unless you've been living under a rock for the last week or so, you know that last Tuesday, Microsoft had their next Xbox unveiling. Either completely appropriately or inappropriately titled based on any given person's opinion, the next-gen console is dubbed the Xbox One, as in the number one. This console is meant to be your all-in-one entertainment hub. Full disclosure, I'm a PlayStation fan. That's not a secret. And although I'd be lying if I said I really didn't enjoy the Xbox bashing on Twitter, the event itself was actually pretty interesting. Wait, hold on to those tomatoes, don't throw them at me yet. Let me explain. They had packed a lot of information into only 1 hour. The new console itself was able to change between TV, music, games, whatever, smoothly and quickly. This is a significant leap forward for affordable technology. However, Microsoft's presentation still left many questions unanswered and even confused some answers more. I'm here to simplify that for you. Here's what we know. First of all, this was a console unveiling. To all you gamers that complain the console has no games, that's what E3 is for. Sony did the same thing with the PS4's unveiling in February, except they had multiple developers. But they still got the same amount of flack. They're not coming out tomorrow. Give them a little bit of time. Also, Microsoft had announced 15 exclusives within the first year alone, 8 of which are brand new IPs. But unfortunately, indie game developers won't be able to self-publish on the new system. Sad face. Also, that spiffy watching TV using your Xbox thing, yeah, that's only available in the US at launch. Sorry, guys. Speaking of games, each disc will be tied to an Xbox Live account. There will be a system in place for used game sales, but that has yet to be detailed. However, if you do want to play the new Call of Duty at your friend's house, then either bring your console or bring your login. The new controller also had over 40 design updates, most notably the D-pad and the trigger buttons. Also, Xbox, you adopted Blu-ray. Thank God. There is also a brand new Kinect sensor bar. In addition to being super improved over the current version, the Xbox One cannot function without it. It stays in sleep mode, so when you say Xbox on, it wakes right up. This is compared to pressing a button on your phone to wake it up. There's a 500 gigabyte hard drive on your new system, but it's not all for storage. Users will be unable to replace it, which sucks because games have to be installed on your system. It also runs on 3 different OSs and will run Windows as well as use SmartGlass as a compatible feature. The system does not always have to be online, but it does have to be connected to the internet. So if you're a broke college student scraping together your pennies in hopes of playing the new console, I hope you have some left over for a fast internet connection. The price of the Xbox One has yet to be released, so I can't tell you how much that is. Finally, let's talk about the backwards compatibility. There's none. Seriously, the Xbox One does not work with current controllers, headsets, the current Kinect, etc. It will not run on Xbox 360 games, it will not let you use digital download games, and say goodbye to your arcade games. But not your entertainment purchases such as music and movies. Yes, I can still watch the Avengers. Also, yes, your Xbox Live Gold subscription will transfer because guess what? You still have to pay for that. Also, your achievements and gamer score transfer. I'm so excited to know that all 2 of my achievements will transfer over. However, I do have one question. With EA's new sports engine being shown off every 2 minutes, will there be sports games? I don't know.
Sometimes a project's success is based on a single stroke of genius. When Star Trek Into Darkness was announced, how many of you knew instinctively that it was going to be a high-grossing smash hit? Exactly. So, how does J.J. Abrams do it? How does a man, for he is only a man, take a franchise that defined nerdiness and grade school bullying for decades and bring it to a general audience? Sexy Spock. Thanks to some great casting decisions, Into Darkness brings us more from the parallel dimension Enterprise crew as they save the government. Basic sequel rules apply here. The stakes are higher, the challenges are trickier, and the villain is increasingly trenchcoat obsessed. So I guess that's a thing now. Which reminds me, hats off to Benedict Cumberbatch, the most British name I've ever said. This movie allowed him to expand from his role as Sherlock Holmes into evil space Sherlock Holmes. Certainly his acting is great, he's chock full of emotion, he draws in the audience with every breath. And yet I can't shake the feeling that he was cast only because he can recite large amounts of information very quickly. Doesn't make it bad, I was just aware of the fact. You know what, I'm just going to say it. This is better than the reboot from 2009. A big part of that is the writing. The first movie was kinda soulless and forgettable, but Into Darkness actually weaves a bit into the narrative. There's a focus on Kirk growing into the captain he probably should have been before they gave him a spaceship, and that's fine. It works because you get to see characters fail and recover and grow. There's depth. Not a lot of depth. I mean, these movies were never going to be the original series or even next gen. The movie isn't going to examine the applications of science fiction theories. We have Futurama for that. And Abrams isn't dumb enough to think he can remake Wrath of Khan shot for shot. Instead, I like to think of these movies as Star Trek fan fiction with hefty budgets. Yeah, Spock's out of character, Kirk looks like he can't legally drink yet, but we're supposed to be in new territory. The franchise is moving in new directions to fit the times. That makes it resonate with modern audiences. In fact, there's a lot about this movie that comments on current events, especially with things like terrorism and anger. I'm willing to bet the adults in the audience can even pull out some 9/11 imagery. If you're a hard enough Star Trek fan, you are never going to like this movie, because Star Trek's an action franchise now. I can understand why that'd be upsetting. I mean, if Final Fantasy was suddenly reduced to a simplistic, action-themed visual novel, I'd probably block it from my mind forever. So I understand your pain, Trekkies. And the difference in writing quality is obvious, and that's exactly what makes it fan fiction. It's not quality work, it's wish fulfillment. It's a story you'd find in a middle schooler's notebook about his favorite characters punching his favorite bad guys. Then Spock and Uhura totally make out, then something explodes. So, you know, it's not really Star Trek. It's more of a Star Trek-themed action movie. But I liked it.
So in case you haven't had enough of the Kinect yet, a Windows 8 compatible version of the new Kinect sensor will be released next year. If your Xbox One Always Listening wasn't creepy enough, your computer will be able to do the same. Not to mention, many gamers were already comparing the PC versus Xbox One, with the new console clearly not winning. Look, you get best of both worlds. Mickey is coming to the PlayStation Vita. Epic Mickey 2 will be available for the handheld on June 18th. It's not a straight port. In fact, they've changed gameplay based on the functionalities of the Vita controls. Remember how Nintendo isn't having an official press conference at E3 this year? Well, prepare yourself for the upcoming Nintendo Direct. On June 11th at 10 a.m. Eastern, Nintendo will discuss the future of the Wii U. Microsoft generally has their conference first to kick off the convention, but Nintendo will be beating them by a whole 3 hours, and you don't even have to leave your room. Also, unreleased Wii U games will be playable at select Best Buy locations during E3. Better line up early if you want a chance to play.
It took me a while to get to this one, but Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is pretty fun, especially for me, since I'm basically a child in a man's body. Most of my criticism for Dark Moon boils down to the fact that the game is very much a kid's game. It's never especially difficult, it's not very long, and sometimes it can actually be kind of funny. The game's biggest strength is Luigi himself. The Mario brother is well characterized and reacts to situations with fear and excitement, which I guess serves to teach emotionally dead children how to react to haunted houses, but it also draws the player in. And I found I wanted to help Luigi just because he was scared and he seemed like a nice dude. At its core, Dark Moon is a puzzle game, and all of the puzzles involve sucking or blowing something with your ghost vacuum. Suck or blow the right thing, and you either continue through the game or get a bonus collectible, of which there are many, which was fun for a while. But I need to find them all of them, and there's a lot. My real problem with this game was the repetition. There are 5 or 6 main types of ghosts to suck, and once you know their gimmick, they're not really a challenge. Bosses work the same way. Solve gimmick, dodge until it's tired, suck as hard as you can. Collectible hunting is exactly the same. Reveal invisible things, look for weird parts of the room, suck the weird parts. But all that would be forgivable if it weren't for the level design. For whatever reason, the game is divided into missions that force the player to teleport back and forth from the mansions to a mission hub. There's no reason for this besides setting up a time trial mode, which is just a bad plan. Mission design forces players to backtrack 2 or 3 times through the same maps, more if they're trying to collect everything. The games would have been so much smoother if you could just play it as a single continuous adventure, and there's no reason it couldn't have been that. Final word, Dark Moon is a kiddie game, but a solid kiddie game. Sure, I became aware of the repetition early, but it never killed the experience. In fact, sometimes I kind of felt proud walking into a room and saying, okay, I'll suck that, then that, then that, and it was easy. It's a confidence builder, and it's an excellent way to distract children if that's something you need to do right now.
Hope you guys enjoyed it last week, because guess what? It's back.
Ladies and gentlemen, here's Jeremy Lawton with Comic Crash.
As you know, I'm Jeremy Lawton, and this is Comic Crash. You probably don't know that I miss the comfort of the teleprompter chair. This was a pretty light week for comic news, even the knowledge of Marvel planning to cast the Human Torch was black while keeping his sister Susan Storm white in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie is a few weeks old, but still something to think about. DC Comics has announced that they're repeating Free Comic Book Day as Man of Steel Day, Sunday, June 9th, to celebrate both the upcoming June 14th release of the Superman reboot film Man of Steel and the June 12th premiere of the new Scott Snyder-Jim Lee series Superman Unchained. Fans will be able to get a free copy of the first issue of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's All-Star Superman, widely regarded as one of the greatest Superman tales ever told, and personally, the first story that ever made me care about the Man of Steel. Speaking of Superman, how does he shave? It's a legitimate question, considering his entire body is supposed to be completely invulnerable. Well, DC and Gillette have teamed up to ask comic writer Kevin Smith, scientist in Big Bang Theory Mayim Bialik, Mythbusters Adam Jamie, and Bill Nye the Science Guy to come up with their own theories. The promo video is live, and videos for each theory will be up on the 28th. To balance out the lighter news week, this week was very heavy in new releases. I wasn't able to fit even half of my pull list on the show, but check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/nerdcastlaurel after the show for short reviews on everything from my pull list. In the double-length Daredevil number 26, Mark Waid has done something completely unimaginable and yet pulled it off without a single need to cry foul. He has given Daredevil fear. The man without fear is afraid, terrified, and it makes perfect sense. It's not a gimmick, it's a truly masterful story. Daredevil has finally reached into the center of the noose that's been closing around him, and everything makes perfect sense, but it can't fully save him from the monumentous threat that Ikari poses. But Ikari is still just the tool being used against Daredevil. It's the mastermind in the can that truly built fear into Daredevil and trapped him in a corner. For no matter what Daredevil does to the big bad, he still currently stands no chance against the sickle known as Ikari that he wields. There's also a very heartwarming story with Foggy being inspired by some kids in the cancer ward. It doesn't move the plot along, but it's undeniably emotional and relevant. Daredevil number 26 gets an easy 5 out of 5. X-Men Legacy is a very different series on an impressive multitude of levels. Legion is not a reactive hero, but a proactive one, subtly moving things along as opposed to the flashy battles. His love interest may be his greatest enemy. No matter how much they love each other, to save him, she recruits people who agree in exchange for a little payback. And even though there's always a big bad, Legion just doesn't care about that. He's there to stop something worse, himself in the future. There's next to no action in this issue, but reading X-Men Legacy is always such a unique experiment. It always ranks high on my list. Number 11 had Paul Davidson and Tana and Huat on art, but the two worked well together, sticking to specific scenes and flowing nicely together. But none of that would matter without Simon Spurrier's amazingly unique plotting and scripting. He plays off cliches very well, and as a result, the series is basically a giant X-Men deconstruction. Also, it consistently has the best covers in the entire industry. X-Men Legacy at number 11 gets a 4.5 out of 5. The Green Team, Teen Trillionaires, is a spiritual counterpart to Gail Simon's Occupy-inspired The Movement, which launched earlier this month. Unlike The Movement, which takes place in the streets, slowly introducing protagonists with questionable morality, the Green Team jumps right into introducing a group that's actually quite likable and interesting, despite being Scrooge McDuck rich. This leads to the only problem with this issue. It spends a bit too long introducing everybody and making sure we get to know them before the plot actually begins to move anywhere in the last few pages. But this wasn't a deal breaker. Art Balthazar and Franco fill the issue with smooth dialogue and a well-rounded cast. It's clear that technology will be a big part of the series, so Iguara's art is a perfect fit and will definitely get to shine more in future issues. It gets a 4 out of 5. All-Star Western number 20. I was a little disappointed when Amadeus Arkham wasn't able to follow Jonah Hex back out west. The two of them made an incredibly interesting duo, but the surprise appearance of Booster Gold, I think it was for the best. Booster makes an even more entertaining and intriguing foil for Jonah, being a man out of time with partial memory loss. His reactions to Hex's actions are about as funny as Arkham's, if less deep. Booster's far more naive than Arkham ever was, coming from a more civilized and rational time. It constantly amazes Booster how much of a sociopath Hex is, and what his own abilities are, leading to a perfect balance of excellent comedy with a very engaging plot, and some truly twisted antagonists. The setup out of the way, 19th Century Stormwatch co-feature begins its first Chew arc. All you need to know is Apache vampires in El Dorado. It's that awesome. Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti are a perfect writing duo, and Moritat's artwork continues to be a perfect fit, as rough as it is. I have to give this one a perfect score as well. Batman Incorporated number 11 excited me at first. I was intrigued by the notion of something Morrison seemed to have overlooked, missing part of the point of the series he created, exploring other members of the Batman Incorporated group. But this issue comes at an awkward time, right in the middle of this huge climax, and it's scripted by series artist Chris Burnham and drawn by George Lucas. Lucas's artwork is fairly simplistic and at times ugly, but Burnham's writing is far worse. I'm not even going to get into why Batman of Japan is the only one who doesn't get his own name, because there's so much more wrong with this issue. The tenuous tie to the main Leviathan story is so flimsy it feels forced, especially when Leviathan is so tightly knit, and this sect is so useless and detached. I could forgive that if the villains were at least interesting, but the group of bikers is beyond obnoxious, and their leader, I kid you not, has full-size robot tigers for hands. She can detach the heads to fight with, but she still has no real hands under there. And so she spends most of her time sitting on her throne and kicking people who fail her, because having tigers for hands is ridiculously impractical. There's a lot of bad dialogue, and you have on your hands an issue that had a good idea of it as a skeleton, but ultimately can and should be skipped. I'm only giving it a 1.5 out of 5. Uncanny Avengers number 8 AU. Don't be fooled by the AU numbering this issue. Age of Ultron is simply the setting for this time-displaced tale. I thought Fantastic Four's AU issue was vital to the series, but it doesn't hold a candle to how connected this issue was to the main events of Uncanny Avengers. If you haven't been following Age of Ultron, but you have been following Uncanny Avengers, I can't stress enough how unskippable this issue is. It really gives you some deep insight into the manipulated minds of the Apocalypse twins, Uriel and Iman. Interestingly enough, this story takes place earlier in their lives due to Kang's nature as a time traveler. I was impressed with how natural it felt to have most of the regular Uncanny Avengers team in one place in this timeline, and Remender managed to explore a lot of the same themes in a different setting. Like I said, this is nowhere near my full list, so please check us out on facebook.com/nerdcastlaurel for the rest of my reviews and all sorts of other interesting nerd stuff.
No. Take that, evil space invader of wheat. You shall never take me alive. Aha! Looks like you don't have a leg to stand on. Haha, but I have one. This one. Does a little song and dance. No! I do the work.
Hey guys, long time no see.
This is Nerd Gear. We're going to bring you the latest tech updates, and we're going to shoot them right at your brain parts.
Yep.
LG has announced the Optimus GJ for Taiwan. This spiffy new model is waterproof. Sorta. It can be immersed in a meter of water for up to a half hour, and it costs about $600 American. But then again, they didn't make this for us.
NASA's working on a 3D food printer. Now, before you get your hopes up of never having to cook again, I wish, you might want to hold on to your grocery list. This new printer will be designed to print pizza. Woohoo, pizza! The best breakfast, lunch, dinner food ever. There will be 3 layers of nutritional powders mixed with water and oil. However, the ingredients will mostly be from insects, grass, and algae for a longer shelf life. Yeah, I think I just lost my appetite. Remember that new section we promised?
Well, we promised it, and then we make those promises into things that are real.
Sometimes.
Mostly right now. So, introducing our new Philosophy of segment with Philosophy of Star Trek, here is new host to the show, Bill Aaron.
Alan.
Hello, folks. I am Bill Allen, a.k.a. the guy in the red shirt from Trekosophy.com, here to bring you Philosophy On. To start off, I thought I would try to explain what philosophy has to do with nerd culture and all the entertainment we love and all the formats we love it. Geekdom is always about imagination and creativity, and about new ideas and new ways of seeing the world. Whether it's video games, comics, movies, TV, everything we do is about understanding the world around us. Even stuff that most people would dismiss as mindless entertainment is not as mindless as you might think. A quote I remember from the TV series Stargate SG-1 sums it up nicely. Science fiction is an existential metaphor that allows us to tell stories about the human condition. Isaac Asimov once said, individual science fiction stories may seem as trivial as ever to the blinded critics and philosophers of today, but the core of science fiction, its essence, has become crucial to our salvation if we are to be saved at all. This week, we'll start by looking at the philosophy of Star Trek since the new Star Trek film is out. Since the new films are a reimagining of the classic Star Trek series, for this segment we'll try to focus primarily on the differences of the philosophies behind both the old and new versions, since it's hard to condense all 50 years of Star Trek into a few minutes. The original series was filmed during the 1960s, and the 60s was a time of radical new ideas, revolutions, and social and political upheavals and uncertainty. Star Trek reflected that uncertainty, and through the metaphor of exploring strange new worlds, they would look at the problems we face today, or then in the 60s today, and try to suggest new ideas or understandings that would help reshape the future into something full of hope and possibility. It was about looking at the world primarily through the eyes of the three main characters, who each represented an aspect of the human consciousness. Spock was rationality, McCoy was emotionality, and Kirk was instinct and curiosity, finding ways to apply both sides to the problems they were up against, and figuring out when to follow your head, when to follow your heart, and when to go for your gut. If you want to do some name dropping, you could say that these three characters embodied the philosophy of Hegel. Spock and McCoy would represent the thesis and antithesis, and Kirk was the synthesis of the two. J.J. Abrams' new take on the franchise takes a different approach. Instead of focusing on the outside world, it's about the introspective stuff. Why am I here? Where do I belong? The first film showed these guys who were, each in their own way, outcasts or rebels, each trying to find their own way to fit in, to make a place for themselves, to find somewhere they belonged. By the end of the film, our characters have finally come together, and they hint at a dynamic that harkens back to the original series, and the core of the new film holds true to the original series and its portrayal of these characters that have become iconic over the last half-century. Star Trek Into Darkness is a film that tests the limits of the question, why am I here? The crew comes face to face with their flaws and weaknesses, and Kirk and the others have to face their own internal doubts while facing an external enemy tougher than any they've faced before. In a way, this look at the internal struggles of the self does apply to the issues we face today. We all have problems and hardships to overcome, and things can seem pretty bad, but we need to reach down inside ourselves and find the strength to go on. When we look at ourselves, I think there's a little Kirk in all of us, finding it hard to give up no matter how tough it might get. And that's why Star Trek still inspires hope for the future. And this reimagined Star Trek inspires hope in ourselves. Even without overanalyzing the souls and struggles of the crew of the Enterprise, Into Darkness was fantastic. The cast and crew are making these characters their own without destroying the memory of those icons we grew up with. This is a great film worth seeing. Catch Star Trek Into Darkness, now playing in theaters everywhere. That's it for this segment tonight. If you are interested in pursuing a longer look at the philosophies of Star Trek, please check out my site, Trekosophy.com. Meanwhile, in a few weeks, we'll be back here again with something new for you. Thanks.
All right, next week, Jess will talk about more console wars and people fighting on the internet. Mitch will review Epic and Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, which is a mouthful. And I might not be here because Catwoman Annual comes out this week, and it might put me in a coma. Although Morning Glories may bring me out of it. And that's Nerdcast.
Thanks for watching.
Come on.
God damn it.
Come on. Come on, buddy. You can play in the car. I think we should keep talking about Optimus Prime.
Okay, good. I did.
I would have said
Optimus
it.
Prime.
Wait, I can start it off with the thing I was saying before.
Who's
Yeah.
wearing a shark head?
Craig, he was in my
So,
Chinese
wait,
class.
are we starting yet?
Talk amongst yourselves.
All right. So I can't hear that Optimus GJ thing and not think of a Transformer.
Yeah.
And then I can't help but think Oculus Prime. Optional. What?
What's allowed?
What?
Oh, we don't have to.
Move around, mingle.
I have a hat. I don't know how I got a hat.
Are we starting over?
Now it's
I don't know.
gone. Bye.
talk
hat.
about-
Orpheus
whatever.
Prime.
Croctimus Prime fights the bad guy and makes you a roast in 6 hours.
Flocktimus Prime. After he defeats the bad guy, he migrates.
Broctimus Prime. He finds all the lady robots.
Baroctimus Prime, President of the United States of Cybertron.
If he had really faulty wiring, he'd be Shocktimus Prime.
Optional Prime. Megatron, I might stop you. Operational Prime. He turns into a cubicle.
Real men, Optimus Prime. He makes his own sandwich.